Morning and blessings to everyone. Thank you for joining us, regardless of what time. It still is kind of early for Saturday morning, but it speaks to many facets of why you're on here this morning. And as I've been a guest on this journey along with you, because I'm usually on your end of the equation of being a watcher of this process, I've been so excited because it shows me the quality and caliber of this organization. Um, you can see what an organization or family and individual is all about by where their focus and emphasis is on. Watch what they do, not what they say, is the old motto. And what I found about Avoria Prime is absolutely holds true in that for me, it aligns with the values that I've seen that Avoria Prime has promoted. And with leadership like Ryan and Jolene, I'll tell you, I put them to the test and kicked those tires, and true to the philosophy of building up people, they will absolutely live that, and to even at times at the cost of financial gain. And that to me speaks volumes. And so that's why we get to choose who we follow as adults. That's one of the gifts that the good Lord has given us. And I have chosen, after my time in the trenches, so to speak, to be a follower of Ryan and Jolene's because of that, as well as Sal and Vanessa. So I'm honored to be part of this process and this Saturday morning process. As soon as I was part of this community, when I heard about what was happening I'm in Pacific time, 7 a.m., I don't think I've missed one except maybe travel or illness, and I think maybe two. And a couple times I've been able to fill in for Luis. And so the filling in part happened to fill the segments that he was having a gap of time because of his scheduling, happened to coincide with a skill set that I'm passionate about. So I was just able to deliver something that had to do about what I would speak to myself about, my personal development journey. And I'm going to share with you a little bit more today about this personal development journey. I love that we have a small group. And I'll tell you what, those that aren't here today, I tell you this, they should have missed the other meetings we've had, but not today. This is the one that I have near and dear to my heart, because we're going to open up ideas, because there's no such thing as drive-through personal development. Okay, let me drive this point home. There's no such thing as drive-through personal development. And when I speak about what people's priorities are, when you look at how much time people spend in anything or how much money they spend on something, it tells you what their value system is. So I'm always interested in what people do, not what they say. So for those of you that are here, I want to drive home. And the reason I have a little bit of perspective on this is because I've been able to train at the highest levels of corporate organization. Not that that is anything, because people are people from Wall Street to Main Street. That's not the point. But different echelons of careers have different skill sets that need to be fine-tuned to differentiate, to be set apart, or to, in the industry, they want to be unforgettable. I'm going to share with you some thoughts today that will allow you to personally be unforgettable. Unforgettable in your presentation, unforgettable in your engaging people. And it all has to do with perspective. And once again, these processes are something that is a repetitious system. It's not a one and done. And I think I'll embellish upon that a little bit more as we go. But I don't know if any of you had a chance to see the title that I kind of chose for today, and it's pretty appropriate. It's probably one of the deepest subjects that I will be sharing with you of this series. And if I'm invited back again, maybe after today, won't. I don't know. But the first time I had a chance to fill in, it was the law of reflection. And it just happened to fit into Luis's program. And that was the day he was absent. And he said, can you fill in? And this is the topic, the law of reflection. And that was right in my wheelhouse. The next time he asked me to fill in, it was the law of the mirror. And today he gave me a license to kill. He gave me a complete carte blanche. And so I thought to stay in step with that process, I entitling today the law of the cake. And I know it's deep. I know it's mind expanding, the concept of the cake, but we're going to try to masticate and eat and chew the cake today. But anyway, it's just a little play on words, but the law of the cake will be so profound, I believe. It's one of the central pieces of personal development that we're going to present, but never unpack fully. That's a process, that's a journey, that's intentional. And let me suggest this to all of you. Unless you take anything to a degree of depth with intentionality, you're not going to be an expert at anything. I would suggest choose something in your life that you drive deep. Just have deep roots and become an expert at it. Become an expert at that thing. We live in a society that lives on headlines and quips. And the thinking process has gone by way of an item that belongs in a museum. This is a saying, there's no statistical analysis to this that I can see, but it's just a statement. Here's the statement. It says that 3% of the population thinks, 7% think they think, and the rest don't bother. And I think we see enough evidence to support that, even in social media and how the treatment of very, very important subjects are handled these days. They're treated with headlines and bullet points. We're not going to be part of that group. And to separate from that group, it is true that statistically, of all the people that could have been here, only 9 are on here. Even within this community, this also holds true. Okay, so and we'll talk about this another time as to why you're here this morning. It's more than just you chose to be here. There's some things behind that. So we're going to speak to those things behind that. Maybe a little bit of interaction today. So I think everyone has access to open up their mic, and we have a small community, which is perfect. It's like having a cup of coffee with you guys. So this is fantastic. The law of the cake comes from this. If you were to walk into a room or your home and it's been vacant, or you just walk into a room and one of the first things you see sitting on the table is this beautiful, beautiful cake. What is the thoughts that come into mind? And I want to open it up. I know it's early, but these are deep thoughts. But share with me your thoughts. If you walk into a room and you see this beautiful cake, it's just sitting there, what comes to mind? What are the thoughts some people would have over this?
What flavor is it?
Hey, Skip.
Dessert.
What flavor? Dessert, Kenny. Yes, Alan.
Is it a beautiful cake visually?
Yes.
Or is it a tasty looking cake?
It's what you envision to be just a beautiful visual, just a beautiful cake.
I would say what would come to my mind was, how does somebody learn to do that?
Okay. Lee is saying wedding or grand celebration, right? James, what was your statement?
I would say, what's the occasion?
Okay, there we go. Thank you for that. And that's generally the general consensus, isn't it? That's what we would all think. But where I want to go with this is the law of the cake causes a human being to come in and say, wow, that looks wonderful, it's great. And where the brain goes is, what's the occasion? What's the occasion? Okay? So let me share with you why this is so important. I'm going to start distinguishing between a concept I threw out a little while ago in one of our meetings, the concept of doing versus being, or I called it human doings versus human beings. Let me share with you why the law of the cake is so wonderful to display this idea. Let me share this with you. The naturalistic world, as we call it, or the scientific world, the scientific worldview denies the miraculous, and philosophically, I agree with that, and I think rightly so. And some of my colleagues would disagree with me, but hear me out. The scientific world, or the naturalistic world, denies the miraculous. In other words, that which cannot be quantified, measured, created or recreated in a laboratory, things that can't be measured, weighed, etc. So by that parameter, that means that the scientific world doesn't have room to understand love, empathy, joy, goodness. And here's the one thing: one area it is not able to answer is morality. Okay, so let's take this back to the cake equation. The worldview, the naturalistic worldview, which says the cake is constructed with these ingredients. That's the naturalistic world, or the scientific worldview. But guess what the scientific worldview cannot question nor even address and answer is, why was this cake made? What's the occasion? What are we celebrating? What is the purpose of this cake? Okay, so I'm using these terms to get to a point of what I want you to take with you for the day. Sean, good morning, my friend. How are you? Would you please do me a favor? Would you mute your microphone, my dear friend? Thank you, Sean. my good friend, Sean. So the reason we're using this analogy is because I really want to drive point and give into your mind a picture word of the differentiators that cause personal development to go one way or the other. Okay, so the law of the cake tells us that if we were to take a look, in an analytical look, all the things that we could quantify have to do with ingredients, has to do with molecular structure, has to do with things that bind within the cake chemically, temperature, all of these quantifiable, naturalistic or scientific worldview. In that construct and from that purview, it can never answer, why was this cake made? Nor does it matter to that worldview. That worldview is not designed to answer that. It wants to. It thinks it has the corner because it can tell you so well what the cake is and how it's constructed and every ingredient and how the ingredients within the ingredients work. Because of that knowledge base, it presupposes, it gets a little bit arrogant to think it has the answers for things that are not within its spectrum, not within the naturalistic physical world. That's why the scientific worldview denies the miraculous, because it cannot explain it. Now, let me share with you why the miraculous exists, and now how we can reconcile these two realities, or two aspects of the one. Okay, so the cake exists, no one questions that. But why the cake exists is the natural place that the human brain goes to. We want to know what's the occasion. It usually connotes a celebration. As Lee said, it's a celebration. What are we celebrating? Those terms of celebration, of joy, of happiness, of meaning, of purpose. Why was this cake made? The scientific world cannot answer. Okay, it's not within the purview of the scientific world. Let me tell you how this cake applies to a human being. In my career, I've spent a phase of my career where it called for me to be at deathbeds, okay, for lack of a better term. It's exactly what it was. And I've been to more deathbeds than any non-health professional needs to be. And when you walk into a hospital, and many of you have had this sad experience, and go with me in your mind for a minute. If you've ever been to a place where someone has said, this person is unresponsive, or even someone that you walked into a location, heard that they are in a vegetative state, what is happening here? Let me tell you where we're cutting to. When you walk into that room and there's a person in a vegetative state, you have a perfectly functioning brain that keeps the bodily functioning and the processes of the body and the breathing and the circulatory system. The physiological part of the body is working because the brain is working. Yet for this person who is termed brain dead, it is not an immoral issue for the family if they so choose to say, we're having to pull the plug. We're having to pull the plug. What happened? What's going on here? In a person who is physiologically all there, the brain is working, sustaining the system and the body. What is missing? What is missing is what we call the personality. What is missing is the identity, the character, the capacity to communicate, the capacity to engage, the love that is shared. All of those things have halted. That aspect of the human being, which is sustained by the human doing, has gone away somewhere. In other words, there seems to be a duality coexisting in one. There's a cake, but there's also a purpose for that cake. Do you see where I'm trying to bridge this gap here? There's a body that physiologically works, but the purpose for that body and its existence has evaporated. And where that's gone and all that, that's not the topic today. But I want to share with you the reality that we've all experienced these things, but we live in a world where the noise blends all things, and it's hard to discern and decipher and to dissect the anatomy of life. And that's what we're doing a little bit today, because I want to surface and for you to feature not the natural or the naturalistic or scientific world. I want to talk about the supernatural world. That's the world in which the celebration is of interest because there's a cake. That's a world that says this person is a vegetative state, although the body organically and physiologically is still there. What is missing is the purpose, the celebration of this cake. And if there's no purpose for that cake, it's going to sit there and entropy will come in. It'll be destroyed, right? Okay, so that's the difference between the brain is what the brain is to the body, the mind is to the soul and to the character of the man or woman. And let me say that again. What the brain is to the body, that's that brain that's in a vegetative state. It's working, it's functioning, it's keeping everything in order. What the brain is to the body, the mind is to the soul and to the character of the man or woman. I want to share with you that there's a separate and distinct but together point of this character person. And let me tell you, and cut to the chase here, the answer to all of your personal development programs and questions and purpose for the cake lies in the mind, not in the brain. However, because we come from the brain world, which is the naturalistic or scientific world, which is the world of methodology, that's our Western mindset, we're conditioned to quantify how much, how fast, everything. How much, how fast. And we think from a naturalistic or scientific world, and we accidentally use those tools in the supernatural world. And we try to answer the supernatural questions with natural tools, and they don't reconcile. Let me tell you why. A zebra can never beget a giraffe. Like begets like, okay? You follow me? The natural world can only give birth to the natural. We cannot go to the natural world to give birth to the supernatural. That's a whole different realm. I'm trying to take you to a supernatural framework because some of you are looking for answers to the purpose of life and your why in to-dos and how-tos and checklists and programs and books and systems that are from the naturalistic checklist world. Let me tell you another story. I had to write this down. I've heard the story for years. I looked it up the other day in preparation for this talk. Let me tell you how important what I'm telling you is. Let me share with you a story. And by the way, when you guys are talking about Forex and a Warrior Prime, if you don't have a story, you're recruiting to the natural world. If you live by the natural world, you die by the natural world, and everyone can argue the natural world. But guess what? If you develop a story, no one can argue with your story. That's how you bring people in. People don't come because of the cake. They want to come for the celebration. What's the cake for? That's where the brain goes. What are we doing with this? What's the occasion? The human mind is the springboard for the purpose of it is to exist and to celebrate and to connect and to have these things which the natural world can never explain. Okay? There's a story that happened in Taylor University 10, 15 years ago, and it's any parent's worst nightmare if you have kids in college or kids away from you. And what happened at Taylor University was a van with the school event was on its way back to campus after a weekend, and a semi-trailer truck going the opposite way went off course and crashed into this van of kids traveling back to campus. Most of the passengers died, and within the group there were two friends, Laura and Whitney. And the sadness of the tragedy was so devastating with the small university. So Laura and Whitney were part of that group, two friends, and it turns out that Whitney had died. So Whitney and Whitney's family had a funeral. While Laura survived, but she was extremely beat up and bandaged and in a coma for over 5 weeks. She was unresponsive, but Laura's family was with her by her side while Whitney's family had to bury her and had a final funeral. About 5 weeks go by, and Laura is starting to come to, and they start taking the bandages off, and she was still evident that a truck literally had hit her vehicle. And she started to respond, and she started to come to consciousness again. And her physical therapist was talking with her and asking her to motion if she could understand things. And she motioned and signaled that she could understand things. And they gave her a pen and paper and to try to test her cognitive location and function as it was recovering. They asked Laura to write her name, and they gave her a pen and she was able to write. And you know how she spelled Laura? Whitney. She spelled her name Whitney. And they were shocked and devastated to discover that this person in the bedside was not Laura. It was Whitney. They had buried Laura, and they thought they were nursing Laura. It was a case of a mistaken identity. So Laura's family, who was caring for Whitney, thinking she was recovering, now had to go have a funeral for their daughter that they missed the burial of. And those that were mourning the burial of their daughter came to the bedside because their daughter, Whitney, was now alive. Let me share this with you. That's an incredible story to begin with, but let me share this with you. From the scientific or natural world view, what was the difference between Laura and Whitney? Physiologically, they looked the same. They were the same, they looked the same. If you look at their picture side by side, they could look like sisters. But what was the difference? Was the answer found in the natural world that made them separate and unique? Why wasn't it okay that Laura's family just said, okay, you take Whitney because we already buried ours and we'll switch right now? How would that have worked out? Why didn't that work out? The reason it doesn't work out is obvious, because the personality is unique and matters. Your personality is unique and matters. You're not anyone else. You are who the constructor of the cake made you to be for the celebration that was purposed at the time which you were created, okay? So because I'm sharing this with you, I want to bring this back down to the fact that there is a natural or scientific world, which is absolutely necessary and wonderful, but let's never confuse the limitations of it as the end-all answer to the things that it cannot address, which is the supernatural, your purpose, and your why in life. So let me suggest this to you. Stop looking for your why in the natural scientific world. It ain't there. The natural scientific world doesn't know the difference between a Laura and a Whitney. You follow me? What we want to do, and what I appreciate that this community is doing, is elevating the awareness and has the chutzpah, the temerity to say, you know what, you guys, there is a difference. There is a difference between the scientific world and the supernatural world. And where we want to go, the reason for existence, that which makes you a Whitney and not a Laura, is in the supernatural. And what this organization with Ryan and Jolene and Alan and these folks are looking to drive, it's less find you out. Let's give us tools so that we can see what the purpose for the celebration and what the cake that is called Ryan or Richard or James or Lee or Kenny or Rebecca, or what was your purpose? Because we want to celebrate that. We need to be part of your celebration because we need you to celebrate us as well. And collectively, we realize that we have a place for each other. Stop looking for your why in the naturalistic scientific world. Your why is not found there. And here's the very interesting thing. Why could the doctors not distinguish between Laura and Whitney? They could tell the body quite well. The reason is they didn't know Laura or Whitney. There's a personal knowledge and relationship that is built over time. To get to know who you are, you need to spend time with yourself, and time in the right place that taps into this supernatural reservoir to start answering that. And we start seeing how hand in hand the organic or the natural works with the supernatural hand in hand, but they're one, but they're separate and distinct. Okay. And so the place of the personal development, the journey that this community is looking to embrace has to do with the depth of transformation, not the superficiality of methodology. Okay? There's a place for methodology, but if it's not positioned in the right place, it's like pushing a rope uphill. We need to put this in proper perspective so that the rope is used in the proper manner. I'm going to close with this one last statement, then I'll open it up for maybe questions, and I'll try to provide answers. For any of the easy questions, I will answer. The difficult ones, I defer to Ryan and Alan for, okay? So just know that. Let me share this with you. Some of you, maybe Lee, might be familiar with Robert Jastrow. Robert Jastrow is the founder of the Goddard Institute at NASA. He's an astrophysicist, and he's the author of a book called God and the Astronomers. Robert Jastrow is an agnostic, basically has slant towards atheistic agnostic. So he comes from that realm. But let me share with you something that he so knew his place of the scientific world, and he knew that our place isn't that supernatural place, but our place doesn't deny that place either. It's just that we can't explain it, and it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's not within our wheelhouse. So here's how it is, and I'll leave you with this, and we'll open it up for question and answer. He writes this: for the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. I'll leave that with you. Keep in mind the difference between the two. They have their place, but give attention to the space in which you're addressing and know the difference. Know that you bring a cake knife to the party, not a hacksaw. Know the difference. That's being sophisticated in understanding your tools and the equipment and that material with which you're working. So I want to share that with you because the actual true journey in my experience in the personal development space has always caused me to understand that transformational is when I work with folks in this supernatural space. So I hope that I was able to shed a little bit of light as to the difference and the importance of understanding and having the knowledge and the skill set to be able to embellish and grow upon that. So anyway, I appreciate your time, and I'd be glad to field some questions or any dialogue that you want to have. If not, Ryan, I turn this back to you.
And that was amazing, brother. I'm gonna I've got thoughts, but I'll wait. I'm gonna wait and see, what other things the other attendees might want to share or ask.
How do you connect with your supernatural part? It's easy to connect to the logical part.
Yes. So the logical part. So let me tell you, not how do you do this. Let me tell you how you don't do it. Maybe there's an answer in that, if that can help. The way you don't do it is by let me backtrack. There's a little backstory to this. I don't know if you've seen, maybe within the last year or two, those of you that are ever on Facebook, and I'm sure it's on other social media things, there's always sponsored little spots. You know what I'm talking about? Sponsorships in your Facebook feed. For a little while, I saw for a season, a month, I don't know however long this campaign was running, there was this guy who said, had a picture of, let's say, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates or something, and the pitch was the average successful person reads 30 books a year. Okay, something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but the concept was the average successful person reads 30 books a year. How are you getting your 30 books a year? And what they do is apparently they compile a synopsis or something. That way they call the best books for you, and now you can read 30 books a year. What's the pitch here? What we look at is success, is the end result. So we have successful people. This is the messaging. So if you, which is A, plus B, which is 30 books, equals Warren Buffett, okay? That's what the messaging is. So what we've done is we buy books and try to read 30 books because we think that the A plus the B equals C, because this is the scientific methodology. This is the quantum. They read 30 books, not 29, not 31. They read 30 books, right? So if we do these steps, it equals success. But then what happens when we read 30 books and we're just 30 books in debt, not better off than we were to begin with? Where was the gap there? What they fail to tell you is those 30 books that those 30 people read was from a mindset that received that information differently than that person A was prepared to accept, okay? So the answer is not in the 30 books. It's what's the mindset that is receiving the scientific 30 books, the knowledge-based books. Okay, so the answer, Lee, it's a long answer to a very, very strong question, a very important question that cannot be answered in a short answer. But the answer lies in the supernatural. So you're saying, how do we get from the natural default brain? Okay, I call that the default brain. How do we get that brain to awaken up? It's to start cultivating the supernatural ideology by I have a process when I work with folks of focusing in on what I call intrinsic worth. And I'll leave that with you. That's the short answer, intrinsic worth. When you're able to wrap your mind around the concept of intrinsic worth, then we can work backwards, because now we have an end in mind. Okay, so it isn't a short answer, Lee, and I wish there was. I wish there was a way that we could flip that switch, but it just isn't so. There's no shortcutting to getting to know your partner, your spouse, or develop a relationship. Ryan and I's relationship grows every time we talk because it's time spent, time invested. The contact points I have with Alan are points that's like, man, I don't want to get off the phone. This is so enriching, so good, because we're getting to know. If I didn't need that relationship, I'd say just email me the material and I'll read about it, or email me your conversation, I'll read about it. We don't operate like that. We want to know what the celebration that cake was put on the table for. What's going on? What's the occasion? You know. So anyway, Lee, I know that it's a philosophical answer. So there isn't a systematic process other than starting with an end in mind. So
So
I know.
Skip, I got something I want to piggyback on that. Actually, it's very much a story that just occurred. Ryan and I just had the conversation. And for me, what you're saying translates into, I think it was a couple days ago when we had it, translates into a personal experience that I had in my life.
Mhm.
Because I agree, you know, with the 30 or 31 or 29 books or any number of books or any number of programs that you listen.
Right.
Yeah, because again, like you, Ryan and I have multiple conversations about multiple topics every single day on either a Zoom when we're looking at each other because that's more connective, or on the phone because we're both running and gunning, flying, and you know, doing all of that. So here's what it was. My spouse, who is not on this call, so we won't kick her while she's down. That wouldn't be fair. But the reality of it is sometimes I come from a place in my life where it's been a long arcing curve for me to get to where I am. You know, when I was very much a daddy's boy, a sporto. And then when I lost my father at age 14, my world was completely turned upside down. We had moved to a new neighborhood. I had no friends yet. It happened during that summer. And I just didn't really know anyone, right?
Yeah.
So whatever challenges it were that God gave me, I wouldn't give up. But I promise you, if he wanted me to go left, I was making two rights, not just one, but I was running away from everything that I knew to be true for whatever reason that was. I mean, one day I will self-reflect on all of that time in my life, that which I can remember of it, because it was pretty much a blur. Well, anyways, at one point in my life, I was introduced to an angel. That would be my wife, who resurrected my mind, who saved me from the self-destructive path that I was on. She knows this because I've told her a bunch of times about it. But then, without a manual, without any male guidance, I had no male guidance during the most formative years of a man's life. No instruction book, no understanding, no close friends, because I had this gigantic Pink Floyd wall up around me, protecting me from anything that was real and right and where I should go or counseling I should receive. I got none. So my whole thing was developed out of a lot of trial and error, and there was a lot more error than there was anything else. And so that's kind of stuck with me. Well, once I realized that I'd met a woman who was completely different than any other woman I'd ever met in my life, based on the way that I was conducting my life, I knew that if I continued to do that, she would eventually see through that very thin lining and go, well, he's a project too big for me. Now, she would tell you that she took me on because she knew I was a project, but I would think that I could say without fear of contradiction, she just didn't know how big of a project it would be. But it was her that drove me to become whatever version of myself I am today. So part of that, he went away. Is he still on the thing?
That's all right. We're all still here. Let's see.
All right. So
yeah, he might have clipped out for a second.
Yep. So anyways, back to the point, I started reading all kinds of different stuff when I knew that I needed to be a better version of myself. Everything from learning how to sell from Tommy Hopkins, because sales was going to be the only way that I was going to make the kind of money that I wanted to earn. It wasn't going to be an hourly job. And I'm really, honestly, I can't remember when I had hourly pay as part of my life. It has always been commission. It has always been performance-based pay, because I could see there was no lid to that earning if I worked hard. So I started reading these books, and I started reading, development books from all the greats, listening to everything there was to listen to. yet I was getting no better. I wasn't moving the needle forward in the most important part. Yeah, maybe I picked up a sales skill, maybe a phrase that was, quaint to quote in certain situations. But the real building me, brick by brick to become a better man, that's the end of what personal growth and development is, to become a better human. And I love the human being, human doing. I quoted you on my Facebook page. My Facebook page doesn't see a lot of action until it really means something to me. I don't care if I do care if it means something to somebody else, but I at least want it to be something that is meaningful in my life, not just, gee whiz, I'm upset about something. So anyways, I move forward. Once in a while, my wife will say, if I slip, back into a place where I don't want to be the person who is reactive instead of thoughtful, who is emotional instead of logical, all these things I don't value for how I want to be. She'll say, well, I guess those books don't work. She'll say stuff like this, like, oh my God, with as many books as you have on your shelf back there that you've read, you should be perfect. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. You're missing the point. God love you. Okay. The thing is, yeah, I've read a lot of books. I've poured into a lot of things. The one component that has made it different is that I want to be the best version of me that I can be. That's my come from. That doesn't mean that when I read these books, it's going to make a profound difference in my life. Some of them are garbage. Some of them I could write better, in my opinion. But I read them, to see what's out there, to get to try and get as many puzzle pieces as I can on my table, so that when I put my final picture together, it is the one that I want to see. But I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. That's how it has affected me in my life. The recipe for me is not necessarily what I read, but what is my mindset while I'm reading it? Why am I reading it? What do I want to get out of it? And I told Ryan the other day, I go, you know what's scary, bro? I've had great success in my life, to the level of some, not to the level of others, and certainly not to the level that I want to have in my life, although we're well on the road to that at this point. In spite of myself, it is scary to me for me to be able to be the best version of myself that I can possibly be, both in my spirit, all in my spiritual life, as the most attentive father and husband, as the best son of God, all these things that will ultimately build who I am. And I don't have a lot of time left on the yardstick. As I said to Ryan, the sun is actually setting on my life. It's not rising. And I want to make sure that I make the most use of that time. And at least when the time comes, I can be proud of who I've become, because I wanted to become more. And I wanted to light up the room when I came in the room and have that, spirit of goodness all about me. And that's what it is for me. So when I read these things, it's because I'm trying to get there.
Yes. Alan, thank you for that. And it is, I love the intimacy of this group where we can, by the way, this is a safe place. Alan, thank you for opening up, because we get to know each other not by what we do, is by who we are. Okay. So Ryan was hinting, if you were listening to one of his statements in a call or two ago that we had with our entire team, of something that are coming down, perhaps down the horizon, perhaps opportunities where we can coexist together for a little bit of time. And in those things, we're considering having an opportunity to speak to these things, so that we can really unpack and open in more than 30 minutes. I still call this drive, my philosophy makes it very difficult for me to talk with you for 30 minutes, because it's reverting back to a philosophy I told myself I will never take, which is drive through personal development. Okay, so that's why what I share and am able to deliver here are concepts. These concepts are the ones that get to be unpacked. That's where the journey is. So Alan, your all of this information, all of these things that you take, Never be afraid of being the best version of yourself, because let me tell you, the good part of that is you never will be. It's like the game of golf. Okay? It will always be room for improvement, but that's what makes the journey amazing. That's what, and when you collaborate and you start looking at the world through those lenses, it's beautiful, because now you have answers for things that used to freak you out before, right? Anyway, so to that end, it is a process, it is a journey, but it doesn't have to be begrudging. If it's done right, it's an amazing journey. It is the fulfillment and the value of life. Okay, so the joie de vivre, as the French say, right? The joy of life. So anyway, Alan, thank you for sharing that. And we'll look to deliver things deeper and richer to give a great perspective as to how you can enjoy and embrace this journey to answer all of those things, to discover self-discovery, new discovery of things that we don't even know that have been there, that are waiting to surface. So thank you for that, Alan. Anyone else?
So,
Hey, Skip.
Yes. Hi, Kenny.
How's it going? So,
Hey, brother.
first off, good. I wanted to ask a question, but I wanted to say thanks to Alan. That's a wonderful story, and I share a similar one to him, as far as lacking male role models in my life. But you know, this community has, and you guys, especially you, Ryan, and everybody else that's on here, have opened up and allowed me for me to feel in a comfortable space myself. As I'm here feeding my 1-year-old daughter, I reflect on how my life has been and how I can change hers. I wanted to ask the question of, you said intrinsic self-worth. Does a component of that share into faith?
Not
is it the same as faith?
That's a great question. No, it's not a component of faith. It's entirely in faith. Okay, but I have a different definition of faith that you would hear in drive-through messages. Okay, so but let me take you from that, what I think you're positing, into the word faith as a meaning.
Correct.
Let me rephrase that, reframe that language for you. Let me use the word spiritual. It's the spiritual component, okay? Sometimes faith looks to delve into that, but faith is a misnomer. We often have misunderstanding of the true meaning of words. For example, most of us, to a degree, at one point or another, have believed a perversion of the word love, right? Many of us believe love is akin to the Hollywood explanation of what love is. Okay, so we have misconceptions of words. Faith is one of those words. So important. And if it wasn't so important, it wouldn't be such an aberration, right? It wouldn't be so attacked. But that's, once again, Kenny, a little bit of a long answer to that intrinsic worth. Listen, you can never separate the spiritual from the physical, okay? You cannot do that. Even if we were to go back to a Judeo-Christian paradigm, there's no such thing as a body that is a shell for an external conscious soul. And I know that's revolutionary to many people, but there's nowhere found in the Judeo-Christian literature. So if we look at what that is, if we look at the construct of the human soul, if you will, it has two ingredients. It is the organic plus the breath of life equals a living soul. Look at Genesis chapter 1 if you're referencing the Hebrew scriptures, okay? So it is the organic, formed out of dust, breath of life came, and the two were animated and became a living soul. There's no living soul deposited into it. the two together became an entity. Okay, so when we address the intrinsic worth of a human being, it is those both aspects, the physical as well as, and we know this to be true. If you have a problem physically, what does that do to your mental and your mind status, right? So we see the union of the two. So what we look to do is to address the holistic person that we have before us, and we do that by dissecting what are the ingredients and so on. But that's, once again, all of these are long answers because there's no short answer to these questions, which is what makes it so wonderful and worth the dive into. Okay, so it's good mental floss for now. But so Kenny, yes, intrinsic worth is in the loose sense faith, but one day when we'll have a chance to visit, I will redefine faith for you in the real sense, and you'll never look at faith the same again. Okay, faith is not having your feet planted firmly in midair. That is not faith.
Thanks, Skip.
That's Disneyland. We don't live in Disneyland. Faith is having your feet firmly planted on solid ground. Okay, and we'll talk about that. So that's just a little sneak into the definition of faith as I articulated. Okay, thank you, Kenny. Rebecca, I think we cut you off a little bit. Good morning, dear.
Good morning. How are you guys today?
I empathize with you, 7 a.m. Thanks for being up so early with us, West Coast dedicated people.
Absolutely. I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Hey, Rebecca, can you turn up your mic, sweetheart? We can barely hear you.
Is that better?
A bit.
Only slightly.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I'm one of the points that I kind of touched on is you're talking about what kind of cake is it? What is the celebration? And I think my battle has always been, I don't even know what kind of cake I am, so how could people know what kind of cake I am?
Yeah.
So, you know, and to touch on, this was before we even started talking, where you were talking about garbage in, garbage out. I feel like, you know, I didn't have the right ingredients for my cake to even understand the kind of cake that I am. That now I've found all those pieces, I found the ingredients, and I'm discovering who I am and what, like Alan touched on, you know, the best version of myself. And and I know we've talked about this and I've thought about it. So, like, you know, what does the best version of me look like? What does my celebratory cake look like? And I think in order for me to have that story you were talking about, I need to understand what is celebration of me. And so this kind of pulled a lot of things together for me that, you know, I need to understand that I have a purpose. I'm wonderfully made. And I do have the best ingredients at my disposal. And that I'm more than just a cake. I'm a grand occasion. So that's kind of what I got out of it today. It's pulled a lot of pieces together for me and a lot of things.
Good. Rebecca, let me wrap up with taking a little bit of a burden off of your mind on this. It's not up to you to bring the ingredients to the cake. Okay, let me just posit that with you. That cake was made by the master chef with the absolute best ingredients. And you know what? That cake is always made at the right time when the occasion is ready to be celebrated. Not ahead of time because it'll get stale, not too late because it'll be unused. It arrives at the right time by the master chef at the exact moment intentionally. Listen, if a cake is made intentionally for an occasion, how much more you are not made intentionally for an occasion. Okay, so I know we're stepping into some areas, but I think within this community, it's safe. I approach this from a whole different perspective, but I'm jumping over a lot of assumptions right now to get to the statement. It's not upon you to have good ingredients. You've been made with the best ingredients that could ever have been available. Now, your job is, number one, to recognize that, and number two, what was the occasion for this cake, right? What's the celebration? And let me tell you, the celebration is not an event. It's called life. Okay? It's called life. So you have a master chef who has created you with the best ingredients already. Let's step into the celebration of life, and that's what we'll focus on. Okay? So it's not upon you to worry about the ingredients. It's done. Done. All right. Thanks, Rebecca. You're awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for sharing. And Ryan, you want to land this plane for us? And thank you so much for the opportunity to take up some bandwidth with everyone here this morning.
Man, we're at 30,000 feet. Really? We got to land already?
We don't have to, but.
Awesome. No, this is awesome, man. I so appreciate, Skip, everything that you sow in. And, you know, you and I also have some great conversations, and let me give you some encouragement, my friend. You have an anointing that you bring to these sessions that is very significant, because your anointing is enabling people to be transparent and to let their guard down and to open up, and that is not common. And so just let me have us end by not merely thanking you for the natural aspects that we can rationalize, because there is tangible value in what you're bringing. But let me encourage you in the supernatural and let you know that with you, my friend, our Father in heaven is well pleased, and you're bringing an anointing to these sessions that is allowing the Holy Spirit to work in a way that I don't think I don't want it to go without making sure you recognize that. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. That I'm so humbled. I thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And just so this community knows, as Ryan says, we do so much spend time, and Ryan and I always say time is our enemy. I say this with Rebecca and with Lee as well, the time we've had, and Kenny. Time is our enemy, because it creeps up and calls us to do other things. But I will tell you one thing that I appreciate so much about Ryan and his and Jolene's leadership is the pluralistic interests that they have intellectually. You can chop it up 4x with Ryan, and you're dealing with the best of the best in that space. You can go in a spiritual or faith-based or family, or you can talk sports, or you can talk anything. And there's so many places you can spend a whole day on one topic. And the complexity that we all have is like the facets of a diamond. And what I would like to have anyone that I come across, and the opportunities are here to share with this community, is to be able to help polish that diamond so that it could be featured and centered, that the light can shine through and sparkle, not for you. Remember this, you guys, if you take one thing away from today, nothing in life is given to you. Nothing in life is given to you. Everything in life is given through you, if you so choose. That's the journey. That's the journey. The journey isn't the one with the most toys wins. That's not the philosophy. To be blessed, abundantly, packed down, overflowing, has to do with the frame of mind. And if you can migrate to the frame of mind that nothing is yours, nothing is to you or done to you or so, everything, even your horrible experiences in life, can be used as a message through you, so that when you have all of the horrible things that have happened in life, even there's horrible things that happen to children, for example, that are victimized. One day when you get to the place, I don't care what your story is, when you align with the purpose for that cake, now you see those reasons and all those horrible things are no longer horrible. They're now a gift by which you can impact other people, and you see its purpose. So we take that which is dark and it comes to light, that you can have life and have it abundantly. And it isn't leaving the past behind, it's bringing it together in an identity where everything is stewarded through you. If you have the mindset that nothing is yours, but everything is through you, you will be the richest man in Babylon. Okay? The fact that things are through you, you are a servant of those around you, your world. Who's the world? Those that are put before you. And when you understand that even the horrible things are not so horrible, they're put away as far as the east is from the west, so that you could use it in gentleness, perhaps, in empathy, in kindness, just something. Let me finish this statement with this. What I was talking about was the brain and body, mind, and personality is so true in this. People won't often remember what you've said to them in your meeting, but they will remember how you made them feel. You heard that? Why is that so true? Because we live our lives in the spiritual. That's where meaning is. I don't care about the information. I want to know, how do you make me feel? If I feel a certain way, and just that's an unnatural thing, we can't measure that, but if it feels right, I'm going to listen to you, because you have empathy, you have kindness, and as I think Kenny was saying, or someone says, and Ryan wrapped it up, of making this community available so that it's a safe place. It's a feeling. How do you measure that? How can you put into, how can you qualify this hour that we spent together? What do you do with that? I call it heaven's Excel spreadsheet. Okay, and it doesn't align necessarily with our QuickBooks down here. It's a different sort of accountability. Don't think you've ever wasted an hour. Guess what? If you invest an hour here, somehow, somewhere in the universe will free up and you'll get 4 or 5 hours back for the one that you've done good for. If you gave your last $100 because you saw that it was, and you don't have it anymore, don't think that you've lost $100. What if things come in an opportunity that weren't there before? You chose to open your heart and to consider your brother before yourselves, and all of a sudden something else comes up, and it may not be financially, but what if something happens that it just is an accountability that tenfold returns to you, that investment, that seed comes back to you. If God requires you to take a seed and return tenfold, what do you think God does to you? If he says we can return twice, 3, 10 times, how much do you think God can multiply your seeds? Where he can say at the end of the day, well done, good and faithful servant. Be a servant leader, be a servant lover to your spouse and to your kids, and watch your world start changing. Thanks, Ryan, for opening that floodgate. I appreciate that opportunity.
Well, we'll simply conclude with an amen. I obviously everybody has echoed the sentiment that they value what you bring, and that they're filled with gratitude for this time.
Thank you.
And so let's go forward, and to Kenny and to Lee and to some of you who brought up kind of the dynamic of how do you access this. I love, Skip, that faith finally arose in the dynamic this morning. And so I'm gonna leave us all with this final thought. This feeling that Skip just described, you can revisit it through faith. Find a quiet place, find some quiet time, and just take that leap of faith, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, but really you guys can. This dynamic that you feel when we're in this environment is available to you because it is Holy Spirit driven. It's not natural driven. And so I just want to encourage you guys until the next time. And I know we will all be anxiously awaiting the next time. And again, we're working on that. We all want more of Skip, and we're trying to find ways to get that done. But until the next time, just know that you guys can reimmerse yourself in this by virtue of faith. So with that, love you guys. God bless you.
Love you all. Thank you all.
Saturday.